You think cavemen sat around grunting at fires, waiting 30,000 years for Netflix? Wrong. Ice Age humans had games, music, art, stories, and social rituals that kept minds sharp and groups bonded through the longest winters Earth had seen. They weren't surviving, they were living. What did they actually do when the world was frozen? If you value documented prehistoric history like this, subscribe. It's the best way to support our work. Also comment from which city you're hearing this from. This script is researched and factual, using sources from archaeological evidence and cave art analysis. Now back to the story. 28,000 years ago in the Dordogne caves, someone mixed ochre with animal fat and blue pigment through hollow bird bones to trace their hand on limestone, not once, hundreds of times. Lascaux holds over 600 animals painted across 17,000 years of visits. Altamira's ceiling took generations to complete. These weren't quick sketches between hunts. Cave art required planning, materials, light sources, scaffolding, and time, lots of time. The pigments tell the story. Red ochre traveled 300 kilometers from Spanish mines to French caves. Black came from burned bone, carefully heated and ground. Yellow from iron deposits, mixed with cave clay. They built palettes, mixed colors, developed techniques for shading. Perspective, charm, and movement that wouldn't reappear until Renaissance masters picked up brushes 15,000 years later. But painting was just the beginning. 43,000 years ago in Slovenia's Divje Babe cave, someone carved holes in a cave bear femur and made Europe's oldest known flute. The spacing between holes follows mathematical ratios that create harmonic intervals. This wasn't random drilling, it was musical theory. Archaeological sites across Ice Age Europe yield bone flutes, whistles, rasps, and percussion instruments carved from mammoth ribs. The Hohlfels flute from Germany dates to 35,000 years ago and still plays recognizable notes. Its maker understood acoustics, breath control, and pitch relationships. They weren't just making noise. They were composing. Music meant gatherings. Gatherings meant stories, and stories meant survival. The Aboriginal Australians preserve songlines that encode geographical information across thousands of kilometers and 40,000 years of oral tradition. Ice Age Europeans likely did the same. Stories weren't entertainment. They were GPS systems, weather forecasts, and technical manuals wrapped in narrative. A story about following certain stars to water sources, a tale about which plants bloom before the spring thaw, a legend about where the herds migrate when ice blocks the passes. Stories kept knowledge alive when writing didn't exist, and mistakes meant death. The Venus figurines hint at complex narratives. Over 200 carved female figures spread from Spain to Siberia, dating between 35,000 and 11,000 years ago. Each region developed distinct styles, but all share exaggerated feminine features. These weren't random carvings. They were characters in stories, symbols in belief systems, props in performances that traveled across continents. The Willendorf Venus, carved 25,000 years ago, fits perfectly in a human palm. Its surface shows wear patterns consistent with frequent handling. Someone held this figure regularly, perhaps during storytelling sessions where the carved woman became a central character. The red ochre staining suggests ritual use, ceremonies where entertainment merged with spiritual practice, games sharpened minds and bodies. The 20,000-year-old Grimaldi burial in Italy included carved ivory gaming pieces. Similar sets appear across Ice Age sites from Spain to Siberia. These weren't simple dice. They were complex strategy games requiring memory, calculation, and forward planning. Senate boards from ancient Egypt trace back to similar gaming patterns found in European Ice Age sites. Players moved pieces across marked paths, captured opponents, and calculated probability. The games trained minds for hunting strategies, resource allocation, and group decision-making. The Pavlov site in Czech Republic, dated to 27,000 years ago, yielded over 15,000 small clay balls fired in hearths. Archaeological analysis suggests these were gaming pieces for complex group activities, not dice. but counters for elaborate board games that could accommodate dozens of players. The clay composition varies, indicating different sets for different games or different social groups within the same settlement. Physical competitions built strength and settled disputes. Spear-throwing contests using atlatls leveraged devices that doubled throwing distance and accuracy. Archaeological evidence shows consistent improvement in projectile point design across millennia, suggesting constant testing and refinement through competitive use. Wrestling matches, foot races, and endurance challenges. The lean muscle development seen in Ice Age skeletal remains suggests regular, intense physical activity beyond basic survival needs. They were training, competing, pushing limits. The Cro-Magnon remains from Les Azes show bone density patterns, consistent with high-impact activities. Jumping, running, wrestling. Their arm bones display asymmetrical development, indicating specialized throwing techniques practiced repeatedly until muscle memory became permanent. These people were athletes. Winter changed everything. When temperatures dropped to -40 degrees Celsius and stayed there for months, outdoor activities became impossible. Groups gathered in caves and shelters, sometimes 100 people pressed together around central fires. Social tension could explode. Entertainment became survival. The evidence sits in cave floors, worn patches where people sat in circles, suggesting regular gathering spots. Fire-cracked rocks arranged in patterns for group activities. Carved bone needles and thread suggest communal clothing production, a social activity requiring coordination and shared skills. The Malta site in Siberia, occupied 24,000 years ago during peak glaciation, shows elaborate interior organization. Living spaces arranged around central performance areas with acoustic properties that amplified sound. Stone lamps positioned to create dramatic lighting effects. These weren't random settlements. They were designed for group entertainment during months of darkness. Dancing left traces too. The Chauvet cave floor shows heel marks and toe impressions in patterns that match ritual movement. 32,000 years later, the impressions remain. They danced hard enough to leave permanent marks in stone. Cave bear claw marks on cave walls often appear alongside human handprints, suggesting people deliberately chose caves with existing animal art as canvases for their own additions. The layering suggests ongoing artistic dialogue between humans and their environment, entertainment that incorporated natural elements into human performance. Body modification served as both art and identity. The 25,000-year-old triple burial at Dolny Vestonich shows elaborate tooth filing, intentional skull shaping, and complex tattoo patterns recreated from skin impressions on clay. These modifications took hours of painful work, voluntary suffering for aesthetic and social purposes. The tooth filing follows specific geometric patterns that vary by burial location but maintain mathematical consistency within each site. Someone was teaching precise techniques for body modification. Craft knowledge passed through generations of practitioners who valued appearance enough to endure significant pain. Jewelry production reached sophisticated levels. The Sungir burial in Russia, dated to 34,000 years ago, contained over 13,000 carved ivory beads. Each bead required approximately 1 hour of carving time. That's 13,000 hours of detailed handwork for a single burial outfit. Someone valued beauty enough to invest months of labor in decoration. The bead patterns weren't random. They follow mathematical sequences that create visual rhythms, spiral designs that mirror natural forms like pine cones and nautilus shells. The makers understood both geometry and aesthetics, combining precision craftsmanship with artistic vision that rivals modern jewelry design. Storytelling evolved into theater. Cave acoustics suggest deliberate placement of art and activities in areas with optimal sound projection. The painted animals at Lascaux align with natural rock formations to create three-dimensional effects when viewed by flickering firelight. They weren't just looking at art, they were experiencing multimedia performances. The Rouffignac cave contains over 250 mammoth drawings spread across 8 kilometers of passages. The images cluster around chambers with exceptional acoustics, where sound carries and echoes create ambient effects. Voice tests in these chambers produce harmonic resonances that transform speech into otherworldly tones. They built concert halls in limestone. Musical instruments evolved beyond simple flutes. The Isteritz caves in France yielded bone whistles tuned to specific pitches that create chord progressions when played together. Archaeological evidence suggests ensemble performances, multiple musicians coordinating complex compositions that required rehearsal and musical leadership. Shamanic practices combined entertainment with spiritual function. The sorcerer figure at Trois Frères Cave shows a human-animal hybrid in a dancing pose. Similar figures across multiple sites suggest specialized performers who combined music, dance, costume, and storytelling into ritual experiences that bound groups together. The Gabilou Cave contains over 200 engraved figures, including humans in animal costumes and masks. Carbon dating of the engravings spans 3,000 years, suggesting ongoing theatrical traditions where performers adopted animal personas for community rituals. The costume details, feathers, horns, tail attachments, show sophisticated understanding of visual transformation. Ice Age humor left traces in art. The Adora Cave in Sicily contains engravings that appear to show acrobatic performances or possibly ritual executions, but the figures' exaggerated poses and grotesque facial expressions suggest comedic intent. Someone was making jokes 30,000 years ago, and others were laughing. Seasonal festivals structured social calendars. The Gönnersdorf site in Germany shows evidence of large gatherings timed to astronomical events. Stones arranged to mark solstices and equinoxes when multiple groups converged for extended celebrations. Site debris suggests weeks-long festivals with competitive games, craft production, and massive communal feasts. These weren't primitive distractions. They were sophisticated cultural technologies that kept human societies functional during the harshest climate conditions our species had faced. The entertainment left DNA traces. Modern humans retain enhanced pattern recognition, musical ability, and storytelling capacity directly traceable to Ice Age survival pressures. We evolved to be entertained because entertainment kept us alive. Competitive crafting drove technological innovation, the finest spear points, carved ornaments, and musical instruments show technical sophistication that exceeds practical requirements. Someone was showing off, pushing boundaries of what was possible with stone and bone tools. Pride motivated progress. The Solitrian points from 20,000 years ago demonstrate flaking techniques so advanced that modern experimental archaeologists struggle to replicate them. These weren't just weapons, they were works of art, requiring hundreds of hours of practice to master. Master crafters gained social status through demonstrations of impossible skill. Trade networks supported entertainment industries. Baltic amber appears in Ice Age sites across southern Europe, over 1,000 kilometers from its source. Carved amber beads and decorative objects required specialized knowledge and tools not available locally. Someone was trading entertainment supplies across continental distances. Social media existed in cave art. The Cueva de las Manos in Argentina contains over 800 handprint stencils created across 9,000 years. Each print represents an individual announcement. I was here. The clustering patterns suggest social groups leaving marks together, creating permanent records of temporary gatherings. Night entertainment required artificial lighting technology. Stone lamps found in decorated caves burn animal fat with fiber wicks, producing steady light for hours. Lamp placement in Lascaux creates dramatic shadows that animate the painted animals. Flickering flames make horses gallop and bison charge across cave walls. They invented cinema 30,000 years before Edison. Children learned through play. The Mezin site in Ukraine, occupied 20,000 years ago, contains over 300 bone tools sized for small hands. Miniature spear points, tiny scrapers, and child-sized atlatls suggest systematic training programs where hunting skills became games. The wear patterns show extensive use. These weren't toys but functional learning tools. Archaeological analysis reveals organized youth competitions. Stone circles at Dolny Vestonice contain fire-cracked rocks arranged in concentric patterns, with central spaces just large enough for individual performers. Carbon dating shows repeated use across centuries. Someone was staging regular contests where young people demonstrated skills before community audiences. The evidence extends beyond Europe. Blombos Cave in South Africa yields 75,000-year-old ochre crayons carved with geometric patterns, cross-hatching, parallel lines. Diamond shapes. These aren't random marks, but deliberate designs requiring planning and artistic intent. Humans were making abstract art 50,000 years before they reached Europe. Ice Age mathematics appeared in entertainment. The Ishango bone from Democratic Republic of Congo, dated to 20,000 years ago, contains notches arranged in mathematical sequences, prime numbers, multiplication tables, lunar calendar calculations. This wasn't bookkeeping. It was recreational mathematics carved on what appears to be a musical instrument. Competitive storytelling drove oral tradition evolution. The complexity of preserved Aboriginal Dreamtime narratives suggests Ice Age Europeans developed similar epic cycles, multi-generational stories requiring memory techniques that transformed entertainment into cultural preservation. Master storytellers gained status equivalent to skilled hunters or toolmakers. Memory palaces existed before architecture. Cave art placement follows mnemonic principles where visual sequences encode story progressions. The Koska cave paintings cluster in chambers connected by specific pathways that mirror narrative structures. Walking through the cave recreates story sequences, physical movement triggering memory recall. Puppet shows left archaeological traces. Carved bone figures with articulated joints appear across multiple Ice Age sites. The Brasempui Venus head, carved 25,000 years ago, shows attachment points for removable hair and clothing. These figurines weren't static art. They were performance props for animated storytelling. Sound effects enhanced performances. Lithophone rocks, stones that ring like bells when struck, cluster around painted cave chambers. The sounds carry across underground passages, creating acoustic networks where musicians in different chambers could coordinate performances. They built sound systems in limestone. Competitive eating existed 20,000 years ago. Bone middens at Amvrosievka in Ukraine show evidence of massive communal feasts where entire mammoth herds were consumed during single gatherings. The butchering patterns suggest organized competitions, systematic processing designed for maximum efficiency and public display of skill. Fermented beverages enhanced social gatherings. Residue analysis from Jiahu pottery in China, dated to 9,000 years ago, reveals traces of fermented rice, honey, and fruit. Earlier sites across Europe show evidence of naturally fermented mare's milk and honey mead production. They were brewing alcohol specifically for social consumption. Fire became performance art. Controlled burns at Kisum Cave show evidence of deliberate fire sculpture, arranging combustible materials to create specific flame patterns and smoke effects. Charcoal residues suggest experimental burning of different materials to produce colored flames and aromatic smoke during gatherings. Makeup and cosmetics served performance purposes. The Kafze cave burials contain ground ochre mixed with organic binders, ancient face paint formulated for durability and visual impact. Microscopic analysis reveals mica additives that created glittering effects under firelight. Someone was engineering special effects 90,000 years ago. Acrobatic performances required specialized training. The Sunghir burial contains skeletal remains showing extreme joint flexibility and muscle development patterns consistent with contortionist activities. Bone density analysis suggests individuals who spent years developing superhuman physical capabilities for public demonstration. Ventriloquism appears in cave acoustics. Certain chambers in decorated caves create sound displacement effects, where voices seem to originate from painted animals on walls. The Reso Clastres system contains chambers where human speech projected toward painted bison appears to emanate from the animal figures themselves. Optical illusions enhanced cave art. The Fontagome cave contains paintings positioned to exploit natural rock formations that create movement effects under changing light conditions. Flickering flames make painted animals appear to run across walls, animation techniques that predate cinema by 30,000 years. Perfume production supported social activities. Residue analysis from Ice Age sites reveals deliberate mixing of aromatic plant materials, pine resin, wild mint, and flower essences combined with animal fats to create scented compounds. These weren't preservation techniques, but luxury products for social enhancement. Tattooing reached sophisticated levels. The Tyrolean Iceman, Ötzi, preserved in ice for 5,000 years, shows over 60 tattoos created using carbon-based inks. Earlier evidence from Ice Age sites suggests tattooing traditions spanning millennia, with specialized tools and pigment preparation techniques passed through generations of practitioners. Professional entertainers emerged during the Ice Age. Skeletal remains from multiple sites show individuals with unique wear patterns, calloused fingertips from stringed instrument playing, enlarged lung capacity from wind instrument performance, asymmetrical muscle development from specialized dancing. Some people made entertainment their full-time occupation. Gambling existed before agriculture. Knuckle bones found in Ice Age sites across Europe show wear patterns consistent with gaming use. The astragali, ankle bones from hoofed animals, were thrown like dice in games of chance. Archaeological evidence suggests standardized rules across vast geographical areas. If you value documented prehistoric history like this, subscribe. It's the best way to support our work. Also, comment from which city you're hearing this from. This script is researched and factual, using sources from archaeological evidence and ethnographic parallels. Now back to the story. Theatrical masks predated civilization. The Grotta du Ren site contains carved bone masks with eye holes and attachment points for organic materials, feathers, fur, and plant fibers that created elaborate disguises. Carbon dating places these theatrical props at 40,000 years ago, making them among humanity's oldest performance artifacts. Clowning served social functions. The Gunnersdorf engravings include caricatured human figures with exaggerated features and grotesque poses. These aren't realistic portraits, but comedic representations designed to provoke laughter. Professional comedians existed 30,000 years before the first cities. Ice sculpting became seasonal art. Evidence from Siberian sites suggests deliberate ice carving during winter months, tools specifically designed for ice work, artificial water freezing techniques, and protected display areas where sculptures could survive extended periods. They were creating temporary art from frozen water. Competitive dancing drove physical evolution. Skeletal analysis of Ice Age remains reveals bone adaptations consistent with extreme physical performance, reinforced leg bones, enlarged attachment points for jumping muscles, and spinal modifications that enhanced flexibility. Natural selection favored entertainers. Mathematics emerged from gaming. The complex geometric patterns found in Ice Age art follow precise mathematical relationships, golden ratios, Fibonacci sequences, and fractal structures that appear in competitive gaming pieces and decorative objects. Abstract mathematical thinking developed through entertainment activities. Recent excavations at Paviland Cave in Wales uncovered gaming pieces, art supplies, and musical instruments in the same layers as advanced tool technologies and organized hearth systems. The Red Lady of Paviland, actually a young man buried 26,000 years ago, wore carved ivory jewelry and was surrounded by entertainment objects alongside hunting gear. For Ice Age humans, art wasn't separate from survival, it was survival. But new analysis of cave floor sediments at Altamira reveals something unexpected. The painted ceiling wasn't created by people lying on their backs looking up. Microscopic analysis shows the artists built wooden platforms and scaffolding systems to work at ceiling height for extended periods. They constructed temporary architecture just to make art. The scaffolding holes remain in the cave walls. They didn't just endure the Ice Age, they threw the longest party in human history.